Hi, my name is Rahul and I run a Montessori school in Bangalore, India. And today I wanted to offer you all a little update on the story of Montessori in India, how it began and where it is today, especially in the context of the pandemic that all of us are going through. So today, the theme that I want to focus on is how we've tried to rediscover the essential of Montessori during this pandemic. For some context, schools in India closed in March 2020, and for the majority of children below 12, they have not reopened. That's 15 months, 16 months already. Absolutely unimaginable. Children and parents and whole families staying in at home, lockdown. And there was a period of time, if you look here, where things were getting bad. This was sometime in the middle of last year. Um, and we were expecting that January, February, things were really getting better, so we'd be ready to reopen. But after that, we've had this absolutely brutal second wave, and it doesn't really show too much signs of stopping. And so, through this whole duration, many of us, both schools and families who are privileged enough, we've almost run a natural experiment of, can we offer Montessori differently? Can we offer it remotely? Can we offer it online? Can we use technology to our benefit? Um, and today I want to kind of offer you that story. But before we go there, I want to start a little bit from the vision that Montessori had. And this is what, and I'm sure many of you may have read the book. She tells us that our pupils are equipped for the adventure of life, accustomed to the free exercise of will and judgment, illuminated by imagination and enthusiasm. And when we look at this, and when the pandemic began and we're all stuck at home, this is the question on our minds. How on earth can we equip children for the adventure of life when they're not coming to school? Would that even be possible? And over the last 14, 15 months, both ourselves and a variety of Montessori schools in India have tried to figure this one out. That can we equip children for the adventure of life even if we don't see them in school? But before we get to that story, I want to contextualize everything. I want to talk a little bit about the early history of Montessori in India. It's a very long and very fabled history, and I want to share a little bit with you before focusing on the present. India is one country where Montessori has never actually seen a decline. Right from the early 1900s, 1910s, for the last 100 years, Montessori has always been around. It's been around through other education movements that have cropped up in the country, but it has never really declined. And in that sense, it's quite a difference from, let's say, the US or parts of Europe, where Montessori has gone up and then it's come down and now it's renewing. India has always been going up, and therein lies a story that I want to share with you. This was the first Indian who was formally trained by Montessori, a gentleman called Paul Chinappa, actually from my state of of Karnataka, the city of Bangalore, who was actually sent by the state to go learn about this new interesting methodology that was coming up in Europe. So he traveled all the way to Italy. He met Dr. Montessori, and he was actually India's first trained Montessori guide. He came back and did a lot of good work in India. So the story starts a long time ago. Of course, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation for all Indians, was a big fan of Montessori. They knew each other. They wrote to each other. And Montessori even invited Gandhi to make a speech at one of her training courses. And Gandhi really resonated with the story of autonomy and self-reliance, that vision that Montessori offered. And because that tied in very well with the Indian independence struggle at that time, the belief that India must be autonomous and must be self reliant. And so he was a big early proponent of Montessori in India. Montessori herself came to India in the late 1930s. Um, she was unfortunately interned here as an Italian during World War II. She wasn't allowed to leave the country, but she was treated as a guest. And she used this time to offer a huge number of training courses. And you can see the picture, the number of students in that course. And this is a legacy that continues to this day. So you have a huge number of excellent training programs across the country that directly stem from Montessori's early efforts. When she was in India, she was also here with her son Mario. And many of you may know, but this was the time when the idea of cosmic education and the elementary program really started blossoming. Till then, it was an idea in Montessori's mind, but it was in the southern Indian city of Kodaikanal that a lot of this vision came to fruition for the first time. She visited schools. She was, of course, very treated very honorably as something of a guru in the Indian tradition, and particularly in the south of India, you have a huge number of Montessori schools that very much follow the original Montessori vision. All of that being said, Montessori gained a great reputation amongst the Indian elites. So you had Gandhi, you had the great Indian Nobel Prize winning poet Rabindranath Tagore, who was another big fan. You had a lot of industrialists who were very keen on Montessori and set up Montessori schools. But there was a problem. And the problem was a problem that, I think we still face, that materials are expensive and training takes time, and when both of these serve as constraints, how can the method grow? And this was a question many Indians grappled with in the 1930s and 40s and subsequently. And let's look at a little bit at that. There were these two, now I think sadly forgotten pioneers, Gijubai Badeka and Tarabai Modak, who did something very interesting. They realized that Montessori, in its full implementation with high quality materials, a 1 to 2 year training program, would not serve the needs of India at that point of time. So what they did was they embraced the spirit of Montessori. In fact, Badeka translated Montessori's works into Gujarati, an Indian language, for the first time. They read the books, they embraced the philosophy, but they tweaked things. So there's a rich Indian tradition of taking in the spirit of what Montessori offers, but changing things to make it work for the Indian context. So they looked at cheaper homespun materials. They looked at a lot of indigenous art that would be brought into the classroom. They looked at practical life from a village point of view. And this became a huge thing in India. Um, what they created was what was called the Balwadi, which is, you could think of it as children's house in the language of Gujarati. And today it's called the Anganwadi. And the Anganwadi program became a thing that was embraced by the Indian government. So, what was essentially an offshoot of the original Montessori vision became taken over by the Indian government, and today the Anganwadi program that works with early years children across the villages and towns and cities of India is perhaps the largest state-sponsored early years program in the world, right? And that is the impact of Montessori, though it's not direct. It's one step removed, and it's Indianized to a certain degree, and that's something that we keep coming back to. So these grassroots innovators, they took the ideas, but like I said, they adapted it to the Indian context. They realized that as it stands, it would remain something that was for the elite, and they liked it, they wanted to spread it, and so they made some of these changes. Was it truly, was it appropriate? We can't really answer that question. Was it high fidelity, as a lot of Montessorians like to think? We don't know, but it's something to think of, that the largest program in the world for early years children is an Indianized version of Montessori, and I think that's really interesting. So how do we connect all of this to today's context, right? As privileged people ourselves and working with a subset of people who are reasonably privileged themselves, at least when it comes to access to technology, a mobile phone or a computer at home. Um, it invites us to ask this question: how do we really think about the spirit of Montessori? We can't be in school, so we can't create that environment for the child. There are no trained people at home. But how do we take this as an opportunity to strip Montessori to its essence? What about Montessori is both timeless and timely as the theme of this conference? And that's something that we've all had to think of over the last 1 year or so. Across schools that we've interacted with and that we are aware of in India, most schools have come to some similar conclusions, and I've listed a few of them here. That um, we look at education broadly. Can we treat education as an aid to life? And in today's context, can we treat education as an aid to pandemic life, to life at home, to life with parents and maybe a few peers who are living close by? Can we offer choice? Can we build responsibility? Can we develop independence? And we believe that this is a great time to actually build independence, because a child truly has an opportunity to stand on their own feet when parents are busy working or doing their thing. And the most important thing, the thing that we take away from the historical Indian reformers, is that the ideal is often the enemy of the good enough. If we thought to ourselves that we can't do something because we don't have the exact material that's needed, we would not have gotten anywhere. Right? So we started with the belief that homemade, cobbled together, creatively, resourcefully constructed materials are fine. We believe that it was okay to offer parents some rudimentary understanding of Montessori principles because they would then go apply it at home. And we said, given that we do have the privilege, we do have the access to technology, let's not look down upon it. Often we hear of technology being looked down upon in Montessori context, but we wanted to use it as a friend and we wanted to use it well. So that's what we've done in India, um, and it's been a truly privileging experience to see how children have responded, to see how families, despite all the challenges, have responded. And I wanted to share with you a few pictures that will sort of bring this to life, that with the school partnering with families through technology remotely, a lot can happen. And if anything, today parents have a deeper understanding and appreciation for the method. Children have continued developing in their own way with the support that parents have provided, and teachers have played a facilitating role in enabling all of this to happen. So, here are some pictures that I'd like to share. After getting some understanding of principles, families, of course, realize that having a routine is really important at home. So, different families collaborated with their children, came up with their own routines to sort of stimulate that order, that sense of order that's so important in early years children. So many families have gone ahead and created their own routines that they follow at home. Practical life is just fantastic. Home is, of course, ideal for practical life. It's the most practical there is when it comes to doing things for real. So, cooking, cleaning, um, right in the middle, you see a piece of artwork called Rangoli that's very common in Indian homes, shelling the peas, sweeping, mopping. Suddenly, these became commonplace in children at home. Earlier, they might be doing it in the school, but had never really gotten transferred to home. And this pandemic has provided an opportunity for this to happen at home as well, which is fantastic for us. We can't celebrate together, but you can certainly celebrate at home. Families, of course, go to great lengths to celebrate in their own ways, and now could include children in that process. And it's not just that. We could go into formal learning, we could go into reading and writing, a few lessons provided online and then supported by parents at home. making materials. You see the movable alphabets and the number cards that children could work with at home, um, geometry work with shapes. And this is actually made using dough of roti, which is an Indian flatbread, something like Play Doh, but you don't need to go get fancy materials. Some of this could be done at home, as it was, by children as young as 4. More math work, trained educators will recognize the number rods, a variation of the cards and counters, and on the right side, a very interesting interpretation of the spindle box. All of which done at home through the creativity of parents, and enabling the child to develop. Children working more advanced, getting into math operations. You see what are called the dynamic materials, again made out of cardboard, at home, and children working on their math, making the stamp game. Another lovely example of the bead materials, except instead of beads, we use Indian pulses. So the little yellow things you see here, that's dal. It's an Indian pulse. Very innovative, creative, and very cheap. Something to remember. Reading and writing continued, science work continued, especially with botany, where you grow plants, you observe them, you record them. You continue for older children with history. This is a lovely representation of the different ages of history, and how tools evolved. You could go around and research plants at home and write little research reports that you could then share with your friends. So this child researched two famous Indian plants called the Indian gooseberry and the neem plant, which is a historically famous tree in India. You could make things, and this child figured out how to make a magnifying glass using scrap at home, and then shared it with their friends. You could study angles using clocks. You can see this child trying to figure out the angle between the minute hand and the hour hand. You could also do it with Legos at home. Equally interesting, equally mind expanding without relying on the original materials. Um, and so, all of that, what does that tell us? And to us, it's one thing, that times have changed, science has made great progress, but our principles have only been confirmed. And along with that, a conviction that we can hope for a solution. These words were, of course, written in a different time, but we still hope for the same. And we truly believe that our principles have been confirmed over the last year, that we offer choice, we offer responsibility, we develop independence, and we follow the child. And if we do all of this, development is aided, and we are truly serving as an aid to life in this pandemic. On the right, I'll close with a lovely letter written by a 6-year-old child, about how she wishes that the pandemic ends. I'll invite you to read it. If you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is up on the screen. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you learned a little bit about Montessori in India and about how we've coped during the pandemic. We hope we can all get back to school soon. Thank you. Bye.
Mabuhay. My name is Donna May Tomboc. I'm an international Montessori consultant. I have served schools and individual families from the US, Japan, Singapore, and the Philippines. I'm affiliated with Consult Asia Global, a training group with presence in Asia, Europe, Australia, and North America. It is a privilege to be with all of you today. It's a surreal feeling knowing that there may be hundreds, if not thousands, of people all over the world joining this conference. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Today, I will share with you a glimpse of what Montessori is for Filipinos and what Montessori is like in the Philippines. So, the history of Montessori in the Philippines dates all the way back in 1913. According to the AMI website, in Maria Montessori's timeline, there was a Filipino, or perhaps a handful of them, who attended Dr. Maria Montessori's first international training course at her apartment in Rome. Students came from Italy and from other parts of Europe, from Australia, from North America, and mainly from, you know, Canada and the US, but also participants flew in from South Africa and Asia, which includes participants from India, China, and the Philippines. So the interest has been there from the get go. In the late 60s and in the years that followed, more Filipinos flew to AMI and AMS training courses all over the world, fly back here, and establish Montessori schools. Some of them still exist and serve as benchmarks of high fidelity Montessori programs in the country. But because the Philippine education system was not ready to make this pedagogical change then, the Montessori movement has not really gained enough traction to go mainstream. Not yet, anyway. Because in the last 25 years, more and more Filipinos have flown elsewhere, to study the method. A lot of them came back here still, and there was a proliferation of Montessori schools in metropolitan areas in the country. However, there are still other schools who just opened their doors and called themselves Montessori even without training, which is equal parts sad and good. Sad because it's not Montessori, and good probably because there's at least a program for the children. But be that as it may, you could see that beneath all that, there's interest. There's interest in what Montessori is, and there's a lot of hope of what Montessori could be in the Philippines. So while the Philippine education system may not be ready for this pedagogical change, I'm certain that the Filipinos are ready to make this transition. So, how have regional and local affairs affected the Montessori movement? I could think of three reasons. The first reason being that the Philippines is an archipelago. Not every island has access to a high fidelity Montessori program, primarily due to poverty, not just geography and availability of resources. So Montessori is seen only as a school for rich people. Rural folks in the coastal areas or in the mountainous regions may not be even aware of what it is. The government ran a few Montessori programs in the rural areas in the past, but as political tides change, Montessori was just not in their agenda. As a result, Montessori has become a privilege. And another another reason could be that the Philippines, the majority of the population here still advocates traditional education. First, education per se is seen as a means to an end. It's a ticket out of poverty. So as much as parents desire their children to get their education from a Montessori school, their main concern is and will always be, will this school prepare my child to enter a top university in the country? And when I say prepare, it has nothing to do with life skills. It has everything to do with grades. And it's sad because children merely go to school to comply with higher education requirements more than learning. And it's similar to how other parts of the world see it as well. A possible solution here is to follow the lead of Ivy League schools in the US, like Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and Brown University, among others. They stop requiring the SATs for college admission. I wish that more schools would follow suit because education should not be about grades. It should be an aid to life. So the last thing that I could think about is that, for areas with Montessori programs, there was a mad rush to transition into an online platform. Of course, there was a lot of mistakes, and I've seen a lot of programs that did not make it. Some worked, some not so much. A lot of schools who went online also shared materials to their parents. They developed kits and even sent whole sets of materials to their parents. And the bottom line is, it seems as if Montessori has become solely a business. Schools are a business, and that's fine, that's essential. But as Montessorians, we have to remember our why. We exist to provide education as an aid to life. Earning from it is just a bonus. Because Maria Montessori designed the classroom to look like homes. Why are we designing homes to look like Montessori classrooms? A possible solution here is to listen to customers. Can they really present those materials with little to no training? Listen to them, the parents. Do they really need to purchase all those materials? I believe in an average Montessori classroom has more materials than a child could ever need or use at any given point in time. So why do we have to ask the parents to purchase the entire sensorial material set and the entire mathematics set? So it's just interesting. Um, and observe the children. Is it working? Is it really working? Because if it's working and the children are happy, because that's a test of the correctness of the method, if they're thriving, if they're not hiding at the back of their laptops so that their teachers won't see them, if it's working and if it's truly helping the child's development, if these schools have the best interest of the child at heart, I believe parents won't hesitate to pay a premium for a high quality, high fidelity program. But as it is, I mean, I believe that, you know, even in the other parts of the world, it's a similar case. Have We have to really draw the line. Are we in the Montessori business or are we in the business of Montessori education? So, how have schools and educators dealt with these changes and with these challenges? Well, the challenge is really, how do you capture the child's attention and interest long enough to watch a virtual presentation without you speaking too much? How does a Montessori teacher build relationships with her students online? These are very challenging. I wish I would have an answer for you right now, but it seems that we need to really study this more, collaborate with other practitioners more, and really face this concern head on and not act like an island away from the other islands, much like the Philippines is. We cannot be fragmented. That's the solution. We have to find unity in our diversity. We have to have more trained Montessori guides. We need people who understand the true nature of the child. We need people who are spiritually prepared to practice restraint. We need people who have a keen eye to observe the child and prepare the environment to empower the child to learn independently. We need people who are willing to take a back seat. After all, the child is the teacher. So we need people like that. And so what will it take, for the Montessori movement in the Philippines to the next level? There are so many answers to this, but I'd like to focus on just two P's. The first P is the pandemic. We're already in it, and it actually pushed us outside of our comfort zones. It really shook us to our core, and Yes, the Philippine education system, whether it's Montessori or traditional, is not prepared for these drastic changes. There was a digital divide, of course. I think there still is. And we are an archipelago. It's really next to impossible to ship out all those modules, in time for for the beginning of the school year, such that every child would have it. It's really a challenge. And surely the pandemic transformed the way we do things forever. We actually became a lot more creative because of it. So it may have served as a catalyst for change. After all, there can never be a renaissance without the dark ages. So to take Montessori to the next level in this country, in the next century, we must start doing things that we have not done yet. And part of that is collaborating with each other, collaborating with all the stakeholders in the government, in the private sector, and the parents. That's the second P. We need to involve the parents. We need to make sure that they have a voice in the movement because parent involvement worked in the US. The American Montessori Society was composed primarily of parents who wanted better education for their children. We have those parents too in the Philippines. And I could say that because there are a lot of forums and groups of very active Montessori parents who are thirsty to learn about the method and who are willing to learn and even spend their money on learning about Montessori. So there's hope, there's potential. So if we want to put Montessori education in every household, across every island in this archipelago, across socioeconomic status, we just have to stop being fragmented. We just have to see parents as part of the strategy. We have to work together with the parents to get us to the next level. In summary, Montessori in the Philippines, ironically, it's still its in infancy, even if it started way back in 1913. But in the last few years, it's been growing really fast. And we have a long way to go, perhaps, in terms of preparing ourselves to commit to the principles enough to lobby for its acceptance as an alternative learning system in the Philippines. But one hope is that we're here, we're participating in this forum, and I'm sure that there's a lot of Filipinos who are registered in this conference. So, to the parents in the Philippines who are watching right now, continue advocating for your child, continue seeking for Montessori truths and Montessori knowledge. To the Montessori organizations in the Philippines, then and now, let's work together. Let's work together. Let's put aside our pedagogical differences and let our agenda be for the sole benefit of the Filipino children. Let's restart this journey together. It's not too late, and the pandemic already made headway for us. And with that, thank you for your time. It's been a delight to speak with you today. Again, my name is Donna May Tomboc, and let me end by quoting Dr. Maria Montessori's in true Montessori fashion. Her This work is from her book To Educate the Human Potential. It's a little bit deep, but I believe that it summarizes the state of Montessori education in the Philippines. She said that society considers important the period of ascent when they are building monuments for their actions, and all rewards go to the triumphant and the successful. The privileged classes are the care and concern of society. Despite the French Revolution and others, the poor have not yet had proper consideration. And always there remains one class that is yet more completely ignored, even among the rich. Such is childhood. So all social problems are considered from the point of view of the adult and his needs, like housing, unemployment, wages, suffrage, etc., far more important than the needs of the child, in whom there exist forces that may remain curbed or may now be developed as has not been widely possible before. It is not enough to ensure for the child to have food, clothing, and shelter alone. On the satisfaction of his more spiritual needs, the progress of humanity depends. The creation, indeed, of a stronger and better humanity. So, if we want to move the Philippines and the whole world forward, we have to be advocates of the child. With that, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Việt Nam của chúng tôi không phải là một đất nước cực kỳ phát triển về mặt kinh tế, nhưng con người Việt Nam vô cùng hiếu học và là một dân tộc anh hùng. Tinh thần đó của chúng tôi cũng thể hiện trong sự phát triển và bùng nổ phương pháp Montessori. Montessori bắt đầu xuất hiện ở Việt Nam từ khoảng năm 2003. Khoảng 10 năm trở lại đây, người ta bắt đầu nhắc đến Montessori như một phương pháp giáo dục tuyệt vời dành cho trẻ em, đặc biệt là những em bé trong độ tuổi từ 0 đến 6. Hiện nay, Montessori tại Việt Nam mới chỉ có đến cấp bậc tiểu học và sự áp dụng này cũng chưa được bài bản và hoàn chỉnh. Thời điểm đầu, trường học cho trẻ có mức học phí rất cao, ít trường áp dụng và chỉ có ở các trường quốc tế. Trường mầm non mang tên Montessori hiện nay tại Việt Nam rất nhiều. Tuy nhiên, chưa có một hội đồng công nhận chính thức nào kiểm định được chất lượng mà các trường đó đang áp dụng. Chúng tôi vẫn đang nỗ lực làm việc với các cơ quan ban ngành nhà nước. Hy vọng thời gian tới, chúng tôi có thể góp sức mình tạo ra một hiệp hội công nhận Montessori, kiểm định chất lượng cho trường Montessori tại Việt Nam để những gì áp dụng trên trẻ theo đúng tinh thần triết lý của bà Maria Montessori. Về đào tạo, chúng tôi là một trung tâm đạt tiêu chuẩn quốc tế. Chúng tôi tôn trọng tất cả các tiêu chuẩn mà quốc tế đề ra đối với những người giáo viên Montessori chân chính. Tuy nhiên, có một số người học một vài khóa học ngắn hạn, chưa đầy đủ kiến thức, còn hạn chế những trải nghiệm làm việc thực tế trên trẻ đã đứng ra tổ chức khóa học thu phí. Trung tâm đào tạo Montessori Seoul quốc tế ra đời, tiên phong đem Montessori chuẩn nguyên bản về Việt Nam, trở thành trung tâm đầu tiên tại Việt Nam được Hội đồng Montessori quốc tế MACT công nhận, một bước đánh dấu mạnh mẽ cho sự phát triển và lan tỏa phương pháp. Chúng tôi cũng là chi nhánh thứ 10 của Viện Đào tạo Montessori Canada trên thế giới và duy nhất tại Việt Nam. Tại Việt Nam, chỉ có số ít trung tâm được Hội đồng Montessori quốc tế MACT công nhận. Chúng tôi tiên phong lan tỏa và chia sẻ Montessori không ngừng. Nhờ rất nhiều nỗ lực, trong khoảng 5 năm trở lại đây, Montessori thực sự bùng nổ. Nhờ những khóa học và sự đào tạo tận tâm của chúng tôi mà có rất nhiều ngôi trường Montessori đúng nghĩa được mở ra. Rất nhiều cha mẹ, giáo viên, chủ trường đã có thể áp dụng tinh thần triết lý này lên chính những đứa trẻ của mình. Sự tích cực đó là chúng tôi đã đem đến sự hạnh phúc với nhiều em nhỏ hơn, được học và tận hưởng những giá trị của Montessori với mức học phí phù hợp hơn. Nhiều phụ huynh, giáo viên, chủ trường được tiếp cận và họ cũng lan rộng Montessori đến với nhiều người xung quanh. Với việc làm thế nào để có một sự so sánh một cách bài bản, từ năm 2018, chúng tôi đã tổ chức rất nhiều khóa cộng đồng. Đều đặn tháng nào chúng tôi cũng có hội thảo từ 100 đến 300 người tại Hà Nội, Hồ Chí Minh là hai thành phố lớn của Việt Nam và một tỉnh thành trong 64 tỉnh thành khác trên đất nước. Hiện tại, cộng đồng của chúng tôi đã có hơn 200.000 người và sẽ tiếp tục phát triển. Với sự bền bỉ đó, chúng tôi thấy rằng Montessori ngày càng đạt được nhiều thành tựu ở đất nước của chúng tôi. Tuy nhiên, một thách thức vô cùng lớn đã nổ ra cho Việt Nam nói riêng và cho toàn cầu nói chung, đó là dịch Covid-19 xuất hiện. Mọi người đều phải ở nhà, không ra ngoài làm việc, học tập và các hoạt động xã hội phải tạm ngưng. Khi đó, Trung tâm Seoul quốc tế đã tiên phong số hóa bằng cách tạo ra những cuộc thử thách trên mạng xã hội. Đó là dậy sớm từ 5 giờ sáng để học Montessori miễn phí. Chương trình này, chúng tôi đã thu hút hơn 7.000 người Việt Nam trên toàn thế giới, góp phần cùng chúng tôi lan tỏa phương pháp này. Và đó là nền tảng chúng tôi chuyển đổi từ trực tiếp sang trực tuyến trong thời điểm này. Mức học phí được giảm xuống để nhiều người được tiếp cận hơn. Đây cũng là thời điểm giúp mọi người có thể củng cố thêm kiến thức nuôi dạy trẻ cho mình và thêm yêu phương pháp Montessori. Chúng tôi đánh giá cao sự nhanh nhạy của mình, đã kiểm soát rất tốt và nhận được nhiều sự ủng hộ tích cực từ phía học viên của mình.
So, scientific is mainly to observe children, mainly to observe them. And I am a silent partner with the children. I'm guiding them and I encourage them.
Còn đối với trường học, chúng tôi tổ chức các cuộc thi về thực hành cuộc sống tại nhà, xây dựng các buổi kể chuyện thường niên để tạo sự tương tác giữa nhà trường và trẻ, để dù nghỉ dịch ở nhà nhưng vẫn có sự kết nối định kỳ.
Hello, I'm Simon. It's an honor for me to be talking about how Montessori schools and how Montessori children are coping during this tough time. We are all under the impact of COVID-19. So during this time, this online environment, for the children to continue their learning somehow, it is not much, but it's an effort. We organize these Zoom meetings where we would have our teachers read the storybooks to the children. Well, the Vietnamese one will, of course, read in Vietnamese. And we have teachers of English who will deliver these stories in English. And also, we spend time talking with the parents. We provide advice for them, as well as recommend activities for them to do at home. There are even professional trainers who provide tips on how to design materials at home that are very easy to do from the parents' perspectives. You know, parents are busy, they always are. But with these tips, they can make materials so that children can actually sit down and work on something meaningful, of the children still doing something helpful even when they're at home with the parents. And until now, there is no news from the government as to when schools might resume. So we're gonna have to be on our feet. Teachers, school owners such as myself will make the most of my time preparing materials, preparing ourselves academically, pedagogically, and spiritually, so that when the children come back, we will welcome them with our open arms and our open minds, and of course, our open hearts. Hello, baby. Hello, hello. Hello, baby. Baby. There, my baby Julie. Hello. My baby Nguyen. Hello. How are you today? I'm fine. I think you're fine too. I think you're fine too.
Eyes, nose, nose, yes, mouth, chin. Wow!
Tại trung tâm đào tạo, chúng tôi tạo ra một mô hình mới để tiếp tục chuyển đổi một cách linh hoạt hơn nữa cho những người yêu Montessori, đó là mô hình Mini School Mom and Montessori dành cho 5 đến 7 trẻ tại Việt Nam, và mô hình này nhận được rất nhiều sự ủng hộ từ phụ huynh. Chúng tôi đang giảm thiểu được các áp lực về mặt tinh thần, cách thức tiếp cận và nuôi dạy con cái trong giai đoạn này cho cha mẹ đang phải ở nhà trông con. Mặc dù trẻ không được đến trường, nhưng bản thân cha mẹ vẫn phải làm việc. Bên cạnh đó, chúng tôi cũng tạo ra những chương trình học phong phú dành cho cha mẹ để những giây phút ở nhà trong mùa dịch Covid này vẫn tạo ra sự hòa bình và bình an trong gia đình. Lộ trình này của chúng tôi là một lợi thế cho những bà mẹ học Montessori muốn ở nhà đồng hành cùng con, hoặc có thể giới thiệu những người giáo viên đến nhà làm theo mô hình này. Mô hình không làm giảm đi sự lớn lên của trẻ vẫn được hưởng trọn vẹn quyền lợi của chương trình học Montessori tại nhà. Chương trình này chúng tôi sẽ đồng bộ hóa trên khắp Việt Nam. Mục tiêu của chúng tôi trong 5 năm tiếp theo là đạt được 1.000 điểm trên cả nước. Với mô hình nhỏ này, chúng tôi mong muốn kể cả những người mẹ ở khu vực miền núi cũng có thể áp dụng và được hưởng những tinh hoa của Montessori mang lại. Đây là một bước tiến mà chúng tôi có thể cải tổ được giáo dục từ tế bào nhỏ nhất là nền tảng của xã hội, đó chính là gia đình. Đồng bộ hóa gia đình, nhà trường với quan điểm, cách thức tiếp cận và giáo dục trẻ nhỏ, tạo ra những cá nhân hạnh phúc, độc lập, ưu tú về sau.
Công ty của chúng tôi có trường học và trung tâm đào tạo. Bản thân tôi cũng may mắn được đi khắp nơi ở trên đất nước Việt Nam. Và tôi nhận thấy rằng có một mô hình ít nhận được sự quan tâm và chú ý, đó chính là mô hình nhóm trẻ gia đình. Covid đến, đó cũng là một dịp nhắc cho chúng ta về sự kết nối trong gia đình. Và sự chuyển đổi số đối với giáo dục cũng là một yêu cầu vô cùng cấp thiết đối với những người đam mê giáo dục. Nhận thấy rằng mô hình những em bé ở nhà cần được sự quan tâm nhiều hơn. Trung tâm đào tạo Montessori quốc tế Seoul cũng đã có một chương trình mới, đó là chương trình Mom and Montessori. Chương trình này của chúng tôi dành cho 3 đối tượng. Thứ nhất là những người mẹ đã học ở trung tâm của chúng tôi, đã có những kiến thức và muốn đồng hành cùng con. Tuy nhiên, cần được sự đồng bộ hóa, chuyên nghiệp hóa và hướng dẫn để có thể đồng hành với con một cách hiệu quả nhất. Thứ hai, đó là những người giáo viên có nhu cầu đến tận nhà để có thể hỗ trợ cho những bà mẹ trong giai đoạn nuôi con từ 0 đến 6 tuổi. Với một chương trình mới như thế này, cần rất nhiều sự chung tay và quyết tâm. Chúng ta sẽ đi từng bậc thang nhỏ nhất cho đến khi chúng ta leo trên đỉnh. Ở trên đỉnh này, tôi nhìn thấy hình ảnh của bạn cùng với con bạn. Khi nhìn lại sẽ cảm thấy thật là tuyệt vời khi đã đồng hành cùng nhau trên một con đường tràn đầy nụ cười và hạnh phúc. Seoul luôn đồng hành cùng các bạn và chúng ta sẽ sẵn sàng cùng nhau lan tỏa chương trình này đến mọi miền Tổ quốc đất nước Việt Nam. Xin cảm ơn các bạn.
Giáo dục luôn là một phần tất yếu của cuộc sống. Chúng ta cần linh hoạt trong ứng dụng nhưng đảm bảo được tinh thần cốt lõi để có thể đưa phương pháp đến sâu rộng hơn nữa với các bậc phụ huynh, giáo viên và chủ trường. Giá trị cuối cùng chúng ta theo đuổi đó là sự bình an và hạnh phúc của những đứa trẻ. Và chúng tôi tin rằng với những giá trị thật chúng tôi đang cống hiến, giá trị đó sẽ ngày càng rộng khắp và thấm đẫm trong giáo dục Việt Nam.
Hello, my name is Angela Charumilinda. I am representing the Preschool Education Association of Thailand under the patronage of Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn. To tell you a little bit about our association, the association was established in 1962 by a group of preschool educators and people interested in preschool younger children with the aim to help develop and work together in developing preschool education for Thai people. Currently, we have over 300 preschools in Thailand as our member, with over 3,000 teachers in Thailand. The association works with many organizations in Thailand and overseas in updating movements, knowledge, and know-how in preschool education. We also organize workshops, seminars for teachers and parents and those who are interested in preschool education. So, what is early childhood education or preschool education like in Thailand? It is that Preschools in Thailand is usually for children ages 3 to 6, which there is a national preschool curriculum for this age, and there's also guidelines for caretaking and development of children younger than 3-year-olds as well. But most schools start accepting students at age 3 into their preschool level. But many schools also provide daycare and nursery for children as young as 1, 1.5, or 2 years old, which they also use the method of early childhood development in their curriculum as well. So our national preschool curriculum, which is currently in use, was updated in 2020. The current curriculum is mainly competency-based, giving schools the freedom to organize activities and methods that they see fit. And as a national language in Thailand is Thai, most preschools, both government and private schools, are taught in Thai. But for the past 20 years, with the changes in globalization, there are more and more demand for international schools. Many international schools in Thailand have opened a lot. Many schools use Montessori, or Montessori schools as well, and Montessori is widely known and accepted in Thailand. The big changes in preschool education in Thailand is that in 2017, the 11th National Economic and Social Development Plan, for the first time, has instated the importance of early childhood development, causing a new Early Childhood Act, which has been passed in 2018. With the new act in place, Thailand has been able to incorporate work of all parties involved in early childhood, whether it's in health, public health, in schools, in universities. So we can see that in terms of early childhood education, for the teachers' part, you can see that teachers needs to be certified, and they need to have a license in order to teach, and they have to maintain their license in order to teach and be caregivers for early childhood as well. So right now, for the past 2 years, everybody knows about COVID. Since COVID, it definitely has affected education, early childhood education in Thailand immensely. We all know that effective early childhood education needs to be hands-on. Online learning is not for younger children. So having children away from school is definitely a bad thing for younger children. So many schools in Thailand, what we do in supporting early childhood education is we use the method called home-based learning. It is where the schools prepare learning kits for children, and teachers can interactively teach students online using the kit, but screen time needs to be limited, and you know that younger children should not be spending a long period of time on the screen. So parents need to support children's learning a lot. With the home-based learning kit, we give guidelines for parents on how to support their learning, or within the kit there are activities and guidelines and for children to follow, and once they meet the teachers online interactively, the teachers will use the materials that are in the kit to actively teach the children. So it is frustrating for us schools, and especially parents, since a lot of parents have to work as well. Even though they're working from home, they still have to, it is hard work in supporting children's learning from home. So we know that one-way learning doesn't work at all. Even though teachers, we try to provide as much materials for kids to learn as much as possible, whether it's the learning kit through home-based learning. Some teachers also provide video clips for children to follow, but still one-way learning does not work. So we hope that children will be able to get back to school soon. With that said, since the beginning of June, the Thai government has been vaccinating teachers, many of the teachers around the country, especially in highly affected area like Bangkok and vicinity. So we hope that since teachers have been vaccinated and vaccination has started, so we hope that pretty soon, within a month or two, we will be able to have children back in school and learning can proceed as normal as possible, which we use the word new normal now. So we hope that learning can proceed as new normal soon. So we know that COVID has affected everyone around the world, so this is the method. Home-based learning is one of the methods that we use here in Thailand, and we hope that COVID goes away soon and everybody stays safe, and hope COVID calms down, and then we can interact with each other and we can travel to see each other, or you can come to Thailand and meet with us soon. Thank you.